The hospital room was eerily silent, save for the soft beep of the machines. Jacob Williams, one of Nigeria's wealthiest businessmen, lay motionless on the sterile white bed. His eyes fluttered open, taking in the dim surroundings. It was all part of his plan, a plan to test the people he held closest to his heart. To them, he was now paralyzed, confined to a wheelchair indefinitely after a staged car accident. But in reality, Jacob's body was as fit as it had ever been. What wasn't fit, though, was his trust in his family. Jacob had built his empire from nothing, rising from the dusty streets of Lagos to the glittering skyscrapers of success. He had everything: wealth, power, influence. But what he lacked was certainty. Lately, he had begun to feel like a stranger in his own home, surrounded by people who smiled to his face but whose loyalty he doubted. Was his wife, Clara, truly by his side out of love, or was it the comfort of the lavish life he provided? What about his only daughter, Amanda, who seemed to have a new shopping bag every hour but barely spoke to him anymore? Then there was Thomas, his cousin, who handled most of Jacob's business dealings but whose actions had begun to raise suspicions. Jacob needed answers, and he was willing to go to extreme lengths to get them. The first 2 weeks passed uneventfully. Clara had appeared devastated when the doctors broke the news of Jacob's supposed paralysis. Her sobs had filled the hospital corridor, and she had held his hand tightly, whispering promises to take care of him forever. Amanda, on the other hand, barely looked up from her phone, muttering, "This is just so inconvenient." Thomas had been the most composed, assuring Jacob that he'd oversee the company until Jacob was back on his feet, though he couldn't resist slipping in, "If you ever do get back on your feet." Back at home, Clara had taken on the role of caregiver with gusto, or so it seemed. She catered to Jacob's every need, preparing his meals, ensuring he was comfortable, and even canceling her social engagements to stay home with him. But Jacob noticed the little things, like how she never ate the meals she cooked for him, or how she locked her phone whenever he was near. Then there were the late-night calls she thought he couldn't hear. Amanda was a different story altogether. She rarely came out of her room, and when she did, it was only to ask for money. "Daddy," she'd say sweetly, "I know you're going through a lot, but can I get some cash for a few things? You know, to cheer me up." Jacob obliged, though his heart ached at how distant she had become. He remembered the little girl who used to run into his arms after school, her laughter filling their home. Where had she gone? Thomas, meanwhile, had thrown himself into the company, assuring Jacob that everything was under control. But Jacob's sources told him otherwise. Deals were being struck without his approval, and money was mysteriously disappearing from accounts. Jacob felt his blood boil every time he thought about it. Was his own family plotting to betray him while he lay helpless, or rather pretended to be? The twist came one stormy night, 3 weeks into his charade. Jacob had been lying in bed, feigning sleep, when he heard voices outside his door. "Clara and Thomas. Are you sure he doesn't suspect anything?" Thomas whispered. "He's completely clueless," Clara replied, her tone icy. "He trusts us. By the time he finds out what we've done, it'll be too late." Jacob felt his chest tighten. What were they talking about? Was it the company? His fortune? Or something even worse? He didn't have to wait long for answers. Over the next few days, Clara and Thomas became bolder. Jacob overheard snatches of their conversations, enough to piece together the horrifying truth. They were planning to sell off his assets and leave the country together. But just as Jacob was preparing to confront them, something happened that he hadn't anticipated. Amanda, who had seemed indifferent all this time, suddenly changed. One evening, as Clara and Thomas whispered in the kitchen, Amanda came into Jacob's room. She sat by his bedside, her usual air of entitlement replaced by something softer. "Dad," she began hesitantly, I've been so selfish. I've been so blind. I didn't realize how much you needed me until now." Jacob felt his heart stir. Amanda continued, tears streaming down her face. "I heard Mom and Uncle Thomas talking. I know what they're planning. I'll stop them, Dad. I promise. I'll protect you. For the first time in weeks, Jacob felt a glimmer of hope. But he also felt something else, a pang of guilt. Had he been so focused on testing his family that he had overlooked their true feelings? Had he pushed them to the brink with his own distrust? As Amanda set her plan into motion, Jacob prepared for the fallout. He didn't know how it would end, but one thing was certain: the truth would come out, and the family he thought he knew would never be the same. The night Amanda confided in Jacob was a turning point. As the rain lashed against the window, Jacob saw a glimpse of the daughter he had once known, the one who had always believed in doing what was right, no matter how hard it was. With her newfound resolve, Amanda was determined to expose Clara and Thomas before it was too late. But what she didn't realize was just how deep the deception ran. The following morning, Amanda put her plan into motion. She approached her mother with an air of nonchalance, casually mentioning that she needed money to buy a new dress for an upcoming event. Clara, distracted and seemingly preoccupied, handed her the cash without a second thought. Amanda wasn't interested in the dress, though. She used the money to hire a private investigator, someone discreet who could help her dig into her mother's activities and uncover the truth about her relationship with Thomas. Meanwhile, Jacob continued to play the part of the helpless, paralyzed man, observing every interaction with a keen eye. Clara's behavior had become increasingly suspicious. She was spending more time on her phone, often stepping out of the room to take calls. And Thomas had practically moved into the house under the guise of helping out. It was clear to Jacob that the two of them were plotting something big. As days turned into weeks, the investigator Amanda had hired began to uncover a trail of shocking evidence. There were late-night meetings between Clara and Thomas at a secluded hotel, transactions involving large sums of money being funneled into an offshore account, and even a forged power of attorney document giving Thomas control over Jacob's assets. Amanda was horrified. "They're not just planning to take your money, Dad," she said one evening as she showed Jacob the evidence. "They're planning to erase you completely." Jacob's mind raced. He had underestimated Clara's cunning, and now he realized just how much danger he was in. But he also felt a surge of pride in Amanda. She had stepped up in a way he hadn't expected, proving that there was still love and loyalty in his family. Armed with the evidence, Amanda and Jacob devised a plan to turn the tables on Clara and Thomas. The first step was to involve the police, but they had to be careful. If Clara or Thomas suspected anything, they could disappear with the money before they could be caught. Instead, Jacob decided to use their greed against them. One evening, as Clara sat by his bedside, Jacob feigned a moment of vulnerability. "Clara," he said, his voice trembling, "I've been thinking a lot about the future. I don't want to be a burden to you or Amanda. I think it's time we started planning for, the worst-case scenario." Clara's eyes lit up, though she quickly masked her excitement. "Don't say that, Jacob," she said, feigning concern. "You'll get better. You just need time." "No," Jacob insisted. "I've come to terms with my condition. I want to make sure you and Amanda are taken care of. I've been thinking about transferring my assets to you, just in case something happens to me." Clara's grip on his hand tightened. "Jacob, you don't have to." "I want to," he interrupted. "It's the right thing to do." Over the next few days, Jacob, with Amanda's help, set the trap. He arranged for a lawyer, a real one this time, unlike the one Clara and Thomas had used for the forged documents, to come to the house. Clara and Thomas, believing their plan was falling into place, couldn't hide their excitement. They were so caught up in their scheme that they didn't notice the hidden cameras Amanda had installed or the fact that the lawyer was secretly working with Jacob. On the day of the meeting, Clara and Thomas sat across from the lawyer, their expressions carefully neutral. Jacob, still pretending to be paralyzed, played the role of the unsuspecting victim perfectly. As the lawyer began reading the terms of the transfer, Clara couldn't resist interjecting. "Can we speed this up?" she said impatiently. "Jacob's been through enough already." The lawyer raised an eyebrow but continued. Just as he was about to finalize the paperwork, the police burst into the room. Clara and Thomas were caught completely off guard. "What's the meaning of this?" Thomas demanded, but his voice faltered as the officers presented the evidence Amanda had gathered. "It's over, Clara," Jacob said, his voice steady as he rose from the wheelchair. The look of shock on her face was almost satisfying. "You thought you could betray me and get away with it, but you underestimated me, and Amanda." Clara's facade crumbled, and she began to cry, pleading for forgiveness. "Jacob, I was desperate. I didn't mean to." "Save it," Jacob said coldly. "You made your choices, and now you'll face the consequences." As the police led Clara and Thomas away, Amanda stood by her father's side, her expression a mix of relief and sadness. "I'm sorry, Dad," she said softly. "I should have seen this coming." Jacob placed a hand on her shoulder. "It's not your fault, Amanda. What matters is that you did the right thing when it counted." In the weeks that followed, Jacob focused on rebuilding his life and his relationship with Amanda. The experience had taught him a valuable lesson about trust and the importance of family. While he had lost Clara and Thomas, he had gained something even more precious, a renewed bond with his daughter. The story ends with Jacob and Amanda working together to turn their pain into something positive. They started a foundation to help victims of fraud and betrayal, using their experience to make a difference in the lives of others. It wasn't the ending Jacob had envisioned, but it was one filled with hope and new beginnings.